Well, hey guys, it's Jill again. This is week 5. I can't believe we've been painting together all month. It's been so much fun. Thank you for joining me. We've got an interesting one that we're going to do today. The prompt for today is splatter, okay? And so as watercolor artists, we probably splatter a lot. So I'm just going to try to incorporate that technique into this particular piece because it's a desert flower. This is a primrose. And this was a photo that I took during one of our hikes in New Mexico. And one of the most interesting things that I learned or just became aware of, taking hikes out in the desert, was the foliage and the tiny, tiny little blossoms. They are just so potent and so visible against that harsh landscape that you see in the desert. And it's just amazing how these tiny little beautiful things they just survive and pop up, and they just have such resilience. And anyway, just really fascinating to see them all over the place. And we were able to catch a really good season. It had been wet, before we got to New Mexico, and so that kind of helped some of these little blossoms to start popping up all along throughout the landscape. So it was really fun to see. But we're going to jump into this one today. The reference photo is in the description for the video here. Just go down there. You'll see there's a link there for it, along with other links for different things that you need to know for World Watercolor Month, and how to get links from me, and how to maybe get some more information about my membership. Especially if you've enjoyed painting with me all month, I would love for you to paint with me all year. So let's jump into it. I'm going to be working with, I'm not going to use any masking fluid today for these white flowers. I'm just going to be careful to just be, where I be very specific about where I'm placing the pigment and doing that type of thing, and working with some splatter, obviously, to get some of that rocky, dusty, there's that pebbly, all those different things that are going on out there in the background. We're going to try to work on that, but still minding scale. And let's just have fun with it, okay? All right, so I'm going to turn over to the work area. And let's see, do I have my work area here? Hold on just a second. Let me get my work area. You guys are awesome. I have got, there we go. All right, here we go. Let me zoom in just a little bit so that I can get everything right where it needs to be. Here we go. Had forgotten to focus this camera in. Okay. All right. So the sketch is here. You guys have got an option to download the sketch too, as well, if you need to. Sometimes that just helps. If you don't feel like you need one, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. So what I want to kind of do is to start off with, I'm going to spritz my page, but I'm going to be mindful to, not really spritz my flowers. I definitely want to keep those kind of light. So I'm just spritzing sort of around the top of the page and kind of just going in a circle here and just avoiding my little flowers. So you can see I've got some nice spritz kind of happening around everywhere but in the flowers. All right, so this is just about establishing some tone and background color and all of those good things. I'm going to start with a little bit of orange. This is Permanent Orange by Daniel Smith. A little bit of my Quin Gold. Okay, just a little bit of Quin Gold. And let me get some water here. I want to kind of thin it down. And then just a tiny little bit of my violet. Not a lot, just a little bit of the violet. And I actually I kind of want to push the sand color, or it is sand, but it's really got this reddish tone. I'm going to put a little bit of hot pink in here, just to sort of add a little pinkish cast to it. So I've got this kind of complex sort of, I don't know, it's just sort of the reddish color that I'm seeing, in the painting, in the photograph. And we saw this everywhere in the desert. But I'm just going to come into my painting, and I'm just going to start working this color in here. And notice that I'm using I'm painting with the belly of the brush and just laying in this sort of scattered, splattered looking brush stroke, and I'm putting it everywhere except for the whites of my little flowers there. Just getting it everywhere. And in fact, up here I had a good bit of water, so it's sort of just blending in and and that's okay too. I just want to kind of lay in this sort of tone, and just keeping my flowers clear. I definitely want those to stay nice and white. All right, so really just this messy sort of tone. You know, we've not painted anything. We're just laying in, setting the stage, okay, for some visual texture and tone to happen in the painting. All right, so now I'm going to take my brush still. I'm going to get a little bit of more of the purple into this mixture, so it's really pushing it kind of purple. And I'm going to use just another brush. I'm just grabbing the handle of the brush, and I'm going to use this to sort of, I'm just flicking my brush, flicking the bristles against the handle of the brush and splattering, okay, getting some texture in here. So I might even have some big drops sort of drop off, but that's okay. This lets me kind of just, I'm splattering and getting, oh my goodness. Okay, well, it is close to the 4th of July, but I thought everybody was done with that. Not much I can do about that. Sorry, folks. All right, so some splatter, okay. All right, so I've got some nice splatter in here, and then I'm gonna mop up the edge of my board so that I don't have too many surprise things moving around, but got some nice splatter in there. That's just going to help me to have a little bit of visual texture for all of the dirt and everything that's going on in the background. Just kind of a nice way to handle that. And while everything was still wet, you know, I've got all of that splatter just sort of, it's just kind of hiding around in there. And oh my word. Okay, I'm going to try to keep going here. All right, so this is kind of what happens when you're out on location and painting. You just never quite know what you're going to run into. All right, so I'm going to use some of the rare green earth for my my foliage here. So, you know, the desert foliage really has that sort of gray-green kind of look to it. There's some of it that's a little bit brighter green, but it really has sort of a subdued, you know, sort of tone to it. And so I want to kind of start working some of that into the painting, just leaving everything wet and coming in here in between the flowers. I'm just going to use this gray-green color to start sort of back painting around my little flowers, and letting this this color, using just my brush with a dry brush sort of technique, letting that sort of create the edges of the, you know, of this little, whatever these little, they're little lacy, leafy kind of things. They're really unusual, but I'm just going to just treat it as a mass of color, as a mass of green, and let that work its way around into sort of shaping the profile of these little flowers. I'm just going around back painting them. Hopefully the natives will calm down on their fireworks, but I'm gonna keep going. It's hard to stop and start a painting all over again. All right, so the foliage is sort of, I'm just kind of watching my photo, and I'm seeing the foliage just sort of sneak its way up, and I can just use this sort of dry brush technique with my little brush to kind of create that lacy effect of the foliage. Just using this same color, making my way around, and just using this nice point on the brush to really define the edge of these little flowers. Here we go. And then just all of that little foliage going up. And then there's foliage. I'm just going to stick with this same green. I got to get some more. This is my Rare Green Earth. If you don't have this, you can, it's a Daniel Smith color, but you can kind of mimic the color by using a little bit of cad yellow, some ultramarine blue to get yourself a green, and then push a little bit of sienna into it to sort of gray it down just a little bit. It still won't be exactly the same, but it's it'll get you through this painting. So this foliage is just kind of everywhere. It's just little scrubby bits of it. I'm just following my photo reference, and in fact, I just realized that I didn't have my little photo popped up here. Oops, wrong photo. Sorry, guys. I'm getting... Oh, this is good. I know, you may have heard it because it was certainly loud enough. There's an announcement being made that there are to be no more fireworks going off, so hopefully that'll help the natives kind of calm down a little bit with that. All right, so just continuing to work through and placing these little green, I'm not getting into details. I'm just putting little green shapes and masses of shapes where I see them, and that is all. I'm not going to try to grab all of these little details, just putting the shapes in there. Keeping it nice and soft. Nice and soft. All right, so I'm really liking the fact that, the foreground, there's that beautiful cast shadow against the rocks, from the flowers here. That's going to be kind of a highlight to come in here and work that shape into the shadows. It's going to be really fun. So let's make sure that we kind of get everything sort of blocked in here before we get too carried away with getting those shadows into place. I'm going to use this same purple mixture I might even deepen it just a little bit, add a little bit more of my Quin Sienna into it to kind of push it into a brownish purple. It's still dark, but it's purpley. And then up at the top, there's sort of this ridge, where this little hill that kind of goes over, and then I'm just seeing these dark shapes, back there behind it. So I'm going to get a bigger brush. Make sure your brush size fits the job that you need to do. So it's kind of a big area. I'm going to use a bigger brush, and I'm probably going to need a little bit more paint. All right, so my Quin Sienna, a little bit more violet. There we go. It's interesting. You never know what people are going to do. We typically like to try to find a golf course or something like that, and Jay will play golf while I'm recording videos or doing lives or something like that, because most people are pretty quiet at a golf course, but today, I guess folks had something else in mind, but I think they've calmed down. All right, so I've got this nice purpley brown going on, and so I want to come back up into this area, and I'm just squinting. There's a lot of rock shapes back there, but again, I want to keep them blurry. I don't want that to be the main thing. All right, so I'm just going to kind of come in here and establish some shapes to sort of represent, whatever. There's just something going on back here, but I don't have a whole lot of information about it. I don't want to overdo and over communicate. I just want to know that there's some dark things back there. I don't really know what they are, but that's okay. Kind of using a little bit of that rock shape to come in here and do that, but see how I'm just emulating. There's just stuff back there. I don't really know exactly what all it is. I can tell that some things are going on, but it's more important to just get the value in there and move on from that. I'm going to deepen this value even more with a little bit of my ultramarine blue, and I'm just using it to kind of come across the bottom. I want some really nice contrast across the bottom, and you know, especially for some of these areas that are even darker. I'm just keeping it back there mysterious. It's a mystery. We don't know. It's just dark. Just squint and look at the shapes, and don't overthink it. Alright, so that stuff's out there in the background. We're going to let it stay there. I might take even just a little bit of Quin Sienna just to drop it in to give some of that red tone in there. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. But look at that beautiful contrast between, there's that distant, just stuff that's over there in shadow, but then all of this sunlit stuff that's going on here. I'm going to move my board to let some of that pigment move around a little bit. And in fact, I like that so much, I want to lock that in. Let me dry that just real quick. Okay, bonus shapes. It just kind of did some different things while I was drying it, and that is okay. All right, so I'm going to move along here. I want to start trying to develop a little bit more, you know, focus in on just the flowers and that beautiful shadow that's happening in front. All of this back here, it's very extraneous, it's very light, it's not, you know, we're not overdoing the information there, and you know, that's exactly what we want. We don't want to overdo the information there. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this green that's right here. I'm just going to spritz that, wipe that out of the way, because I want to start working with a little bit of a reddish tone for that sand color that's going on. So again, I'm going to get some of the orange up here and a little bit of my Quin Sienna. Really getting a bright kind of orange, and what I want to do is make sure it's really thin, and I want to start bringing this, I'm going to overlap this into the foreground. I'm just kind of putting it, I'm not getting into my flowers, but I'm just kind of incorporating this and inviting it to come right into the foreground. I want the foreground to be a little bit more intense, and so one way to handle that is to either have a little bit darker value or a little bit more vivid tone. This gives me an opportunity also to sort of come in here and add a little bit more detail around some of those flower edges. See how they're there? Now all of my little flowers right now, they look real floaty, you know, like they're just sort of not anchored, but as soon as we start getting that shadow in there, that's going to take care of it. All right, so I just used a little water to just soften the edge of that orange, because I want it to be more vivid toward the foreground and more muted going back toward, you know, the background there. All right, so all right, let me wipe the edge of my tape here. Okay, while that is just sort of kind of sitting there, I'm going to turn my attention to my little flowers. All right, so they have some little shadows are present in the petals to give them, you know, a little bit of shape. I want to be careful with the color that I choose for that. So I'm actually going to use just the rare green earth to be my shadow color, because it ties in right with, you know, the little leaves that are here, the little leafy, these little leafy shapes. I'm using a little pointy brush to kind of come in here, and I'm going to start actually building value in the leaf shapes, and then just let that little dark value carry over into the you know, the flower itself. In fact, let me zoom in just a little bit so that you guys can see the work. And I'm going to let me see if I can adjust that light to where it's not making such a glare. It doesn't do that. Okay, let me do this too. I still want you to be able to see the picture. Let me move everything over just a little bit. Thanks for being patient. All right, so there's that. Let me get the little picture. Come on, there we go. All right. So I'm going to tilt my board to try to get that glare out of there. There we go. All right, so this is just rare green earth that I'm using, and I'm wanting to use it, you know, in the little leaf shapes wherever the shadows are, but I'm also going to let that shadow color kind of bleed over into the petals of the flower. I'm just going to let that be the shadow color too. So I'm just sort of establishing a little bit of tone where the shadow needs to go. I'm clearing my brush, and then I'm just wetting this, just giving it a little. See how that shadow color is just perfect for it, even though the shadow color might be, you know, in the photo it might be a little I don't know, it's just it's kind of this a warm gray is what it is. But if I kind of, you know, try to use what I'm seeing, you know, in terms of value, as long as I just focus on the value, but then use the color that's going to communicate and serve the painting better, just kind of helps. And it just makes that little flower just start to stand up and be present. Little guy. All right, so see, just if I had probably gone in and used a shadow color that was, you know, gray, or, you know, just some other color, it makes it really hard to try to integrate these things. So using whatever your neighboring dark value is, I find that it really helps to just stick with that same color, even though it might not be the actual color it's supposed to be. The value is really what you're after. That's the important part. So this is just rare green earth straight out of the tube. Again, you can mix some up with a little bit of cad yellow, some ultramarine, and just a tiny little bit of sienna to push it to this olivey gray sort of tone. All right, so I'm just looking at my reference photo and getting the darks in right around these little petals. Just want to focus on them. There's some little dark bits up under this little thing. I just kind of want to, I don't want to overdo it and pay too much attention to some of these other elements that are out there. I'm just tossing in just a little bit, just so that it's kind of got some information there. But we want all of this other to just disappear and just fade off into the background, just quietly, unnoticed, because it's not really the star of the show. We want these little flowers. They're already so tiny, so let's make sure we zoom in and give them their due, right? All right, so again, with the shadows are very, very soft. And in fact, it might even be wiser to just start with a little bit of clear water on the petal wherever you're needing to start creating these little shadows in the first place. and then just bring a little bit of that tint to the party. Kind of works out a little better that way. A little bit more glare. I'm trying to eliminate that for you. Just a little soft shadow, and it's just, I'm just using that same color. You know, even if, you know, if it really does make a difference to just stay with that same neighboring dark value. It really just helps you tell the story. Alright, so little bits, you know, get some water in there first so you don't overdo the values, because we definitely want these little petals to be just soft and gentle. They don't shout. They're just tiny little bits. Alright, just clearing my brush out just so that I can soften and blend a little bit, but just keeping it really soft. Look how soft those little flowers are. I'm even going to come back in with a little bit more of the rare green earth just to punctuate, really push hard some of those darker little values that are in there. Alright, so now let's get into this little part where we want to, I wish it would let me zoom when it was both pictures there, but I can only do one at a time. Alright, so I just wanted to zoom out just a little bit so that we can see what's going on with this so far. Really, really liking that. So now we want to really get into some drama. I am going to put some little yellow centers in the Primrose, but I'm going to hold off on that just a little bit until all of those little gray shadows have had a chance to dry. Alright, so for this little shadow section that's in the front, you know, where the Primrose is actually casting a pretty strong shadow, you know, against the ground here. Oopsie, why is it doing that so tiny? Oh no, can't do that. Alright, hold on just a second. You guys are patient. Let's see. Alright. Why is it doing that? Troubleshooting right in the middle of the broadcast. Okay, I have no idea why it's doing that. Okay, I'm going to have to kind of go with it for just a minute. Actually, we could actually do this. This will solve the problem. How about if we do that? Okay. All right, so I want to really get that dramatic shadow in here, and if you look, you know, if you look closely at it, you know, it's a pretty complicated shape, and it's really it's leaning really strong, you know, with the direction of the sun. It's really pulling, you know, to the left, you know, at that at that sharp angle. So we want to make sure that we're doing a similar thing here too. I've not, just like on the latch handle from an earlier lesson, I've not sketched out that shape. I feel like it's a little easier to just paint the shape, but I definitely want to make sure that I've got a lot of color ready to go. So my color that I'm using is actually from just a little bit ago, all of that purple sienna mixture that we used to create that sort of background, those abstract shapes back there. That's really what I'm going to get into, but I am going to push into it with a little bit more of the sienna, and so it's almost kind of this, I might even put a little bit of orange in there. I kind of really, I want that, let's see, you're not able to see it. I really want this orange brown kind of mixture, so all I did was just push a little bit more sienna and a little bit of orange right into that. So I've made, it's really kind of like, it looks like melted chocolate, it really does. So that's kind of the color that I'm going for in here. And even as I look at this, I think I'm going to push the color just a little bit. Let's see, what do I want to do? I'm going to put some red into this. So this is my Winsor red. going to put some Winsor red in there and a little bit more orange and a little bit more purple. So I'm basically, it's the same kind of chocolatey brown color, but I really want it to be deep, and I kind of want it to have this reddish tone. And so so it is kind of melted chocolate still, but there's sort of a reddish tone, and adding the Winsor red into that kind of helped do that. So I want to make sure that I've got plenty of this, and then I'm just really going to have to do a little drawing. Okay, so I'm looking at my reference photo, and I'm making sure that I've got plenty of pigment. You want to make sure you've got plenty of pigment, and I'm just going to come into the painting, and I'm going to start with this shadow, and I'm just using a tiny my rigger my dagger brush that's got a really nice point, but it's got a belly that's really full and can hold lots of pigment, and it's going to let me just kind of keep just sailing through this and making my way all the way around. And I'm just going to start drawing the shadow. See how that red just sings against the green? Okay, that was one of the reasons I wanted to kind of get a reddish tone. I knew it was going to make contact with this green and this grayish green, and I really wanted it to be dramatic. Alright, so I'm just using a little scribbly technique. You know, there's a big section of this brown tone, the shadow tone, that's pretty solid. You know, so I'm just kind of filling it all in. But then it gets lacy, okay, because the light is coming through all of these little lacy, shadowy bits of that leaf structure. And this was why I kind of didn't want to draw it. It's like, I don't want to like have to recreate this twice, and then I have a little bit more, you know, flexibility and freedom to just really work with it freehand and just, you know, get the big sections in. Make sure, you know, it's leaning, you know, it's leaning with the sun. So make sure that all of your little lines are carrying that sort of that 45-degree angle with the sun. All kinds of little shapes are going on, but just try to have fun with it. And you know, I am not painting just you know, a photographic, super realistic whatever to capture this. I'm kind of just playing with it. We've got a little bit of a thunderstorm rolling in. We've just had all kinds of excitement on this broadcast. Got a little bit of a storm coming in. I'm going to watch this, because if it does get bad, I might have to step out and get inside. But at the moment, I think we're doing okay. It's just the wind sounds worse than it is. Alright, so just working these little lacy sort of shapes. There we go. Alright, I'm going to lay the board down. I want to get up into the top portion of this, because right up under the plant it's the darkest, because, you know, the little plant is bearing down, you know, it's really close to the ground, and those little shapes are right in there. I'm going to take a little bit of this. I'm adding a little bit of water to kind of thin, sort of thin out that reddish tone just a little bit, just so that I can put it in a couple of other places, you know, because it's still casting a shadow, you know, on these different places on the desert floor. You know, it's still all these little bumps and bits and bobs, wherever they are they're still making a little bit of a shadow against the floor too. I might even take a little bit of ultramarine blue and just come into, like as a secondary shadow color, into some of these little shapes here. I'm going to let this shadow come off the front of the picture plane here. Yeah, I'm just checking my weather. Yeah, we've just got a little wind coming through, I think is all we've got. If I was in Kansas right now, I would definitely be alarmed, but I think we're okay at the moment. All right, so now I'm going to switch over to a little bit my other little dagger. It's a little shorter, doesn't have a fine point, and I'm going to use some of this same color to just sort of come through, and I kind of want to splatter a little bit. Oops, let me do something to make sure that I can protect my little flowers. Make sure you cover up your flowers. Okay, so I'm going to come through and I'm just going to do some splattering with the purple. I wonder if you hear that wind. All right, and then there's these little rocks, right in the foreground. So I haven't really drawn them, but I can see they've got little shadow shapes. And I'm just using a really fine, thin, sort of super diluted mixture of this same shadow color to sort of come in and add a few little of these little textures, these little rock textures here and there, wherever they may be. All right, and then I'm going to get into my Quin Gold and a little bit of this orange. Let me show you the color. So it's just a little bit of Quin Gold and this orange that was on my palette. I'm just kind of making a soft golden tone. It's not a bright, vivid cad yellow. I really don't want that. I know that the flower presents with a really vivid yellow tone, but I think I'm just going to use a softer sort of golden orange. And see how I handled those little stamen? I just made little specks, just little specks, and they stand out great. I still want to take a little bit of purple, and this is just straight purple, and I'm just dropping it in as a shadow color right up under, because it's really dark right up under the plant. Here we go. See how it just anchors? Now the plant is not floating anymore. It's just anchored and just hanging in there. All right, so let's dry what we've got. Okay. All right, so I am going to wrap up the painting here pretty quickly. They are making some announcements out here at the golf course that they want to wrap things up and have everybody get off the golf course. But real quick, I want to show you how I want to finish this up. All right, so I've got my white gouache. I'm getting back into that. I had some of that over here on the side of my palette, and I'm just going to mix it with just basically this orange that was right here. I just want to give it a little bit of tint. And anytime I'm using gouache on my palette, I always share this with my members, I don't ever get the gouache into any of my wells of paint. I'll mix it out here on the palette area, but I don't want to contaminate my my paints. All right, so just real quickly, I kind of want to come in here and just find a few little spots where I know that I can kind of reinforce a little bit of highlight on some of these little shapes. And there's also some kind of little spriggy bit back here, and I really kind of like the way that it sort of shoots up and breaks the picture plane here and goes up into over that dark area. Oh, I just love that. And there's a few little bits of that. And again, I don't want to overdo this and it become a painting about the spriggy bits, but I do think that that was kind of a nice touch. All right, so let me zoom out so you can see the whole thing. And there is our little desert flowers. Awesome. All right, let's dry this one more time, and then I'm gonna, yeah, I don't want you to have to hear the Okay, I want to just reinforce just a couple of these. Again, they dried really light, and I definitely want to be able to see them. All right, and then I'm just going to risk just a little bit. I have to. There's a little bit of, there's an orange. I just want to see some orange. I'm just getting the orange, and very gently, I need more than that, more orange. I'm going to just kind of make a little bit of an orange sort of glaze just right over the top of this right here in the foreground. I just need a little extra color right there in the foreground, and that totally did it. Look how it makes those little white blossoms pop even more. Okay, super fun painting. I love, love, love all of the contrasts, and that's kind of speaks to the desert anyway. It's absolutely full of contrasts. Just such a harsh environment, heavy shadows, brilliant color. It just provides you with all of those things. It was just a fantastic experience. I encourage you to paint in the desert if any time that you can. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. You know, we've had some fireworks and wind and everything. I deliver all things. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun to do in spite of our little challenges that we had, but it was super fun. Definitely take some time to, you know, really look at that little, the area that's down on the bottom that, you know, that gives you that really hard contrast against the ground. You know, if you feel like you need to sketch that with a pencil, that's okay. Just make sure you do it lightly, and then when you do go in to paint it quickly. Make sure you've got plenty of pigment together so that you're not having to come and mix and fiddle with that again. You really want to just lay that in, you know, really well right off the bat that first time. And don't be afraid to get those really hard contrasts in there, because they're the ones that really make that light sing and make all of those values, make all of those forms show up so beautifully. So, well, listen, guys, thank you so much for joining me this month. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you are interested in painting with me on a regular basis, definitely check the link down in the video description of any of these videos that you have seen during the month. I would love to have you with me every single week for more videos. I'm bringing all kinds of landscapes and different things to you all through the months, all year long as we're traveling, new sights and scenes everywhere we're going. I'm trying to integrate that in with all the painting that I'm doing. So would love to have you join me. So until next time, I will see you later. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye, guys.